They are afraid of you, not because you are loud, not because you threaten them, not because you carry weapons or wield power they can see. They are afraid of you because you stopped needing them. And that silence, that calm, unshakable silence, is the most terrifying thing a human being can witness in another. Most people will never understand what you are about to hear. Most people are not ready for it. But you already knew something was different about you. You felt it. You just didn't have the words yet. Let me tell you something about your past. You were always the one who cared too much, the one who explained yourself too much, the one who stayed too long, forgave too fast, and apologized for things that weren't even your fault. You gave people versions of yourself they didn't deserve, and still they left, or worse. They stayed and made you feel invisible. You remember the moments, the room where your voice shook and no one listened, the conversation where you youred everything out and received nothing back, the relationship where you shrank yourself smaller and smaller just to make someone else comfortable. You were not weak. You were awake in a room full of sleeping people, and that made them uncomfortable, because emotionally aware people are dangerous to those who live in denial. You felt things deeply. You noticed what others ignored. You sensed the shift in energy before anyone said a word. And instead of being celebrated for that gift, you were punished for it, called too sensitive, called too intense, called too much. But no one ever told you the truth. The truth is, you were never too much. You were simply surrounded by people who were not enough. And that realization, quiet, slow, devastating, is where your transformation begins. Psychological explanation here is what psychology tells us. And listen carefully, because this changes everything. There is a phenomenon called reflected appraisal. It means you learn. Ned who you were by watching how others reacted to you. When they flinched, you thought you were too bold. When they went silent, you thought you were wrong. When they pulled away, you thought you were unlovable. You built your identity around their comfort. You shrunk your presence to fit their limitations. You dimmed your light so they wouldn't have to face how dark their own lives had become. This is not weakness. This is called conditioning. And it was done to you slowly, invisibly, over years. Here is what else psychology tells us. People with the deepest empathy are often the most psychologically powerful, but the most psychologically wounded, because they absorb the emotional chaos of others, because they feel the weight of rooms, of silences, of words never spoken. You were carrying grief that wasn't yours. You were solving problems that weren't yours to solve. You were responsible for emotions that were never your responsibility. And in doing all of that, you abandon. On your own, not once, 1,000 times. The psychological term for this is self-abandonment, and it is the silent epidemic of the emotionally intelligent. You learn to betray your own instincts in order to maintain peace. You learn to silence your own voice in order to be accepted. You learned that your presence was conditional, that love came with requirements. And so you performed every single day. You performed calmness when you were devastated. You performed strength when you were shattered. You performed certainty when you were completely, utterly lost. The exhaustion you feel, that deep bone-level exhaustion that sleep doesn't fix, that is not laziness. That is what happens when a person lives a life that is not their own. Now, I want you to stop, take a breath, and receive this, because what I am about to tell you is something most people will go their entire lives without understanding. Confidence is not loud. Read that again. Confidence is not loud. It is not the person dominating the conversation. It is not the person who needs everyone to know their worth. It is not the performance. It is not the expensive clothes or the rehearsed charisma or the carefully constructed image. True confidence, the kind that terrifies people, is the absence of the need for approval. It is the person in the room who says nothing and somehow commands everything. It is stillness. It is economy. It is the calm that exists in someone who has already made peace with who they are. Here is the hidden truth. Most people you have encountered in your life were not confident. They were performing confidence. They were loud because silence made them anxious. They were dominant because they feared being seen as weak. They pushed you down because they needed someone beneath them to feel tall. That is not power. That is fear wearing a mask. Real power never announces itself. The most psychologically dangerous person in any room is the one who has no thigh. Noting to prove. Think about that. When you have nothing to prove, you become unpredictable. When you are unpredictable, you cannot be manipulated. When you cannot be manipulated, you become the one thing insecure people fear most. Free. And freedom terrifies those who have built their entire world around control. Here is another truth. The people who tried to break you, They were not reacting to your weakness. They were reacting to your potential. Abusers do not target broken people. They target powerful people who have not yet discovered their power. They saw what you could become before you did, and they worked consciously or not to make sure you never got there. Every person who belittled you sensed your depth. Every person who dismissed you feared your vision. Every person who walked away from you knew somewhere in the back of their mind that they were not worthy of where you were going. Your pain was not random. Your pain was the price of your potential. Power. Transformation phase. So how do you become the person who terrifies them? Not with aggression, not with revenge, not with noise, with silence, with discipline, with a transformation so complete and so quiet that by the time they notice it, it is already too late. Step 1. Stop explaining yourself. Weak people explain. Powerful people move. Every time you justify your choices to someone who has not earned the right to understand you, you hand them authority over your life. You owe no one your reasoning. You owe no one your internal world. You owe no one access to the chambers of your mind. Let your actions be the explanation. Let your results be the statement. Let your silence be the answer. The moment you stop over-explaining, something shifts in the room. People sense it. They cannot name it, but they feel it. You have become less readable, and less readable means less controllable. Step 2. Detach from outcomes. This is where most people fail. This is the razor's edge. Detachment is not indifference. Do not confuse them. Indifference means you do not care. Detachment means you care deeply, but you are not enslaved by the result. The person who needs to win every argument has already lost. The person who needs everyone to like them has already surrendered their identity. The person who cannot walk away from a bad situation has already been imprisoned. You practice detachment not by caring less, but by valuing yourself more. When you value yourself truly, deeply, completely, the outcome of any situation becomes secondary. Because you know that no loss can define you. No rejection can diminish you. No silence from someone else can silence who you are. Step 3. Master the art of disappearing. Weak people react. Powerful people disappear. This is not about being cold. This is about being intentional. When someone disrespects you, you do not explode. You do not beg. You do not argue. You simply begin to withdraw your energy, quietly, company, necessarily, consistently, without announcement. You stop initiating. You stop performing. You stop investing in a space that does not return what you give. And something extraordinary happens. The moment your energy leaves the room notices. People always understand the value of something when it is gone. When your warmth disappears, they feel the cold. When your attention withdraws, they feel the absence. When your presence becomes rare, it becomes sacred. Step 4. Become obsessed with your own becoming. This is the discipline they never taught you. The most powerful people on earth share one invisible characteristic. They are almost frighteningly focused on their own evolution. Not on competing with others, not on what others think of them, not on what others are building, only on what they themselves are becoming. Every morning they return to the same question. Am I becoming who I was built to be? And every action, every choice, every conversation, every hour of effort is filtered through that question. This is not selfishness. This is the deepest form of self-respect, because a person in true alignment with their own becoming radiates something unexplainable, a certainty, a direction, a gravity, and people are drawn to it or terrified by it. There is no middle. Step 5. Rebuild your relationship with silence. You were taught that silence is emptiness. You were wrong. Silence is where the most powerful people live. The person who speaks with precision, who chooses every word deliberately, carries more weight than the person who fills every second with noise. When you speak less, every word matters more. When you react less, your presence becomes more powerful. When you desire less, your authority becomes undeniable. Learn to be comfortable where others are not. Learn to sit in silence and feel no urgency to fill it. Learn to hold your thoughts behind your eyes like something precious, because mystery is power, and the person who is fully known is fully controllable. If this is reaching something deep inside you, if you feel like this was made specifically for you, subscribe. Because what comes next will change how you move through the world forever. This is only the beginning of what you are about to become. I want you to think about someone who once made you feel small, someone whose opinion used to shake you, someone who looked at you and saw a version of you that you are no longer willing to be. Hold their face in your mind. Now understand this. Their power over you was never real. It was borrowed. They borrowed it from your insecurity. They borrowed it from the version of you that had not yet learned your own worth. They borrowed it from the silence that lived in you where confidence should have been. And you gave it to them willingly. Not because you were foolish, but because no one had ever shown you the alternative. No one had ever looked at you and said, "You are allowed to be terrifying." No one had ever said, "Your presence is a privilege, not a burden." No one had ever said, "The world does not get unlimited access to you." So you shrunk, and shrunk, and shrunk, until you were a sliver of who you were designed to be. But here is what that person whose face you are still holding never counted on. You were never truly broken. You were compressed, and compressed things when released have force. Think of a spring held down for years. Think of water held behind a dam. Think of a person who has been quiet for too long. When they finally speak, the world listens. When they finally move, the room shifts. When they finally stop apologizing for their existence, something in the atmosphere changes. That is what is happening to you right now. Quietly, invisibly, but irreversibly. You are remembering yourself. Not the version others manufactured through their fear and insecurity. Not the version you constructed to survive in spaces that were already ways too small for you. The original version, the version that knew before the world got to it that it was something extraordinary. And here is the most important thing. Confidence does not come from becoming something new. Confidence comes from returning to something ancient. It lives in you already. It has always lived in you, beneath the apologies, beneath the second-guessing, beneath the years of shrinking. It was waiting, patient, undefeated, eternal. And now, right now in this moment, something inside you is beginning to remember. You can feel it, can't you? That feeling is not hope. Hope is fragile. What you are feeling is recognition, the recognition of your own power. I am not asking you to become someone else. I am asking you to stop being someone you never were. The version of you that flinched at every criticism that was not you. The version of you that needed their validation to feel real that was not you. The version of you that apologized for are taking up space that was never you. That was the armor you wore to survive an environment that was not built for someone like you. But survival was never your destination. You were made for something else entirely. You were made to move through this world in a way that makes people stop. That makes them lean forward. That makes them remember the moment they first stood in your presence. Not because you demanded it, but because you finally stopped hiding it. Subscribe, follow, stay close. Because every piece of content on this channel is a doorway back to yourself, back to the clarity you lost, back to the silence that is not emptiness but authority. Every week we go deeper, into the psychology of real power, into the architecture of unshakable confidence, into the kind of mental strength that does not ask permission and does not explain itself. This community is not for everyone. It is for the ones who already know they are different, the ones who felt it long before, they could name it, the ones who came here not by accident but by some quiet, invisible pull toward the truth. You are here because part of you already knows what you are becoming. Trust that. Do not walk away from it.